Hey, folks, we're back and we're talking about Cisco, which had one of their Cisco Live events this week. And they announced, I think, I haven't seen this many new product launches from them all at once in a long time. I think this would probably rank as one of their most ambitious uh, Cisco Live events. And they basically came along on two themes. One is they've created their own LLM that has been trained to create agents that will automate the management of networks and a few other things alongside of that, anything related to infrastructure for that matter. And they're pushing along on that, and they showed some previews of that capability, and we should expect to see that later this year in terms of actually finding its way into some mainstream IT environments. The second thing is that they're saying is that the rise of AI is going to create a massive amount of data that's going to have to flow through our networks, and the current networks are not going to be anywhere near fast enough. And that will lead to essentially a massive refresh of all the networking infrastructure, starting with the core and then working your way out all the way to eventually access points. Of course, Cisco has a vested interest in that occurring because they make a lot of that equipment and that gear. But it did seem, talking about swagger from the previous episode, that Cisco was kind of feeling its oats around AI finally, and that they felt like they were in this game and have something to say. But John, you're in the Valley. Cisco's been awfully quiet as of late. What's your take?
Yeah, that's a really good summary, Mike. And going back to IBM, it's kind of the same situation. These behemoths that are legendary parts of the framework of technology, not just in Silicon Valley, but the whole world. And they kind of get forgotten or taken for granted. And Cisco, in a sense, what I think they're trying to do, and I talked to a couple people there about these announcements, is that they get criticized for the breadth and depth of what they do. Like they do too much or they have too much. That actually puts them in an actually interesting advantage in terms of AI. So they got the pipes, they've got the pieces, they've got the Lego blocks. Actually, a couple of their executives referred to the Lego blocks that their customers are freaking out about over AI. So what Cisco, if you really oil it down, is they want to build an infrastructure for the AI era. There are three areas that they mentioned to me. So they're locked in step on this: future-proof workplaces, AI-ready data centers, and digital resiliency. So they were hammering home that idea, and they got a tag phrase for it: "Make AI work for you." If you'll see the signs somewhat. What they want to do is they want to bring calm to the chaos, because given all the AI agent announcements in particular, you've got CIOs, IT managers semi freaking out over what they're going to do. Maybe for the next year or two, some of them lean on consultants, but that's not going to last long, I don't think. So this is what they're trying to do, is they're trying to orchestrate. This is what Cisco wants to do, is help you orchestrate. And it's interesting. They kept referencing the chief product officer at G2 as the guy who's basically in charge of this massive undertaking to make them relevant in the AI era. And I think I give them credit. I think they do have legitimacy because they've been through all the other previous eras. And I think for the first time in several years, you're seeing a little bit of a strut from Cisco. I mean, usually you write about their layoffs, their retrenchments, their acquisitions to try to move into other areas. But I think now they have kind of a cohesive, cogent plan that they put into place. And we'll see if it works. But you know what? I'm going to give them credit, like IBM. They're trying to establish themselves in an area, and I think they're off to a promising start if they're able to do this.
So again, I'll play hearts and flowers for all those people sitting on Cisco stock. Poor people. But no, you're right. G2 Patel is who you're referring to, I believe, John. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing G2 a few times, and he's always been a rock star there. He's always, look, this isn't 1999 Cisco where they controlled the entire network, right? And everyone else was on also ran. It's a different Cisco, but they're also not just about network switches and routers anymore. They have huge software, they have huge security, WebEx, that kind of thing. they're all over the place, including AI. But if you look at many of their successful endeavors over let's say the last 7 years, you'll find G2 Patel behind them, including they made some great acquisitions in the security space over that time. Duo Security was one. A lot of friends at Duo. Splunk, of course, is another.
Splunk, they really are playing
Yeah.
up the Splunk aspect of this.
Well, for good reason. They paid a lot of money for that. But G2 was the man behind a lot of that stuff, and so he is. I think of him as the number 2 guy there now at Cisco, and I see this as this has his fingerprints all over it, because he still does have that vision of Cisco, Silicon Valley's royalty, right? Them and HP were in many ways the royalty out there. Well, besides you, of course, John. But this is. I think this is a great move on their part.
So you mentioned something, Alan, that I didn't, that I'm glad you did. They were just known, I mean, fairly or not, as a company that acquired a bunch of other companies to try to play catch up. They were, I would just say it's just kind of, they get criticized for trying to do too much with too many products. But I think in this weird way, this may help them in at this era right now.
Yeah. Well, they got a lot of boats in the water. I'll tell you something though, John, and Terri, you probably know this. I'm in cybersecurity 25, 30 years. For the majority of that time, and it may still, well, I don't know today, but for the majority of that time, what vendor derived the most revenue from security, even before we called it cyber, when we called it InfoSec? What was the biggest security vendor in the world for probably 10, 15 years running during that time? Cisco. Right? Their firewalls were the firewalls. Terri, you know this.
Yeah, and I actually was going to say, some of the things we've been talking about in recent weeks about AI and agentic AI, and and the security concerns, right? The shadow AI, security tools in the hands of the bad guys. I mean, those are all valid, but Cisco's in a real position with their sort of security underpinnings to counter a lot of that and mitigate some of those issues. I mean, they do have a very strong security story.
And this is before Duo and before Splunk.
Right, exactly. Before Splunk, all of that. Yeah. So they definitely have sort of the infrastructure for
SourceFire,
that.
another one they bought. But Terri, you probably remember SourceFire, Marty Rush.
So there's an aspect to this that I'd love to get Garima's opinion on, because I'm torn. On the one hand, everybody shows up and says, I have these AI agents and it's going to make the technology more accessible and you won't have to lean so much on specialists. And so it's kind of part of this mass democratization of IT. And then the next breath, you go talk to people, and especially some of the more senior folks who actually are practitioners, and they go, this stuff is awesome. I don't need any more of these junior kids around here. I got these AI agents that will just automate all this stuff for me. And they're going, it's going to benefit them more than it is the democratization of IT. So, I mean, when you look at all this AI stuff, what's your reaction?
I think software as a profession has always evolved, right? So we as practitioners are up for that evolution. We do not want to do the toil work. So if somebody wants to automate this for us, that's great. We have a lot of other things to do. Quantum AI is coming and the AI stack is kind of producing a lot of work for the practitioners. But having said that, I think I'll also come back to the point which was being discussed with the Cisco, the new products they're kind of coming up with. And what I am seeing is this new breed of AI data centers, right? And I'm not alone in this journey. So what we look at it from an enterprise perspective is that we want a tech stack that works end to end, right? So I mean, they can say that we have Lego pieces, but I don't know if the industry is ready for the Lego pieces yet. We need the tech stack at full at the data centers. So now what they're playing around with is AI infrastructure as a service components. Like if you see the recent announcements, they have made like the infrastructure components, the security components geared towards the infrastructure side of it, right? So what I would like to see more from Cisco is like how they are partnering with platform guys, the application guys. How do you make this as a neutral space? Because if you look at the geopolitics, it is very hard to kind of also scale this ecosystem beyond North America, right? So if we don't make it a geopolitical neutral place, and how do we do that? Do we have consortiums? Do you have partnerships? Do you have alliances, right? And how do you steer the talent pool? So there's some more work to be done in that area. These Lego pieces are great. It's a great start, but I think there is more work needed to be done. And Mike, to answer your question, I mean, for us as software practitioners, we probably look forward for that evolution of AI agents, but I think we also look forward for like GPU as a service or infrastructure, AI infrastructure as a service, and we have to have a neutral space to play around with.
Fair enough. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back and we have C-Blocks here. There's a new botnet out there, Bedbox 2.0, wreaking havoc. Terri will have some news hopefully for us on that. You're watching Techstrong, gang.